Hello again, and welcome to another edition of Ask the Professor, where we respond to your questions on economics, on political philosophy, on constitutional development, on history, on geopolitics, on all those things that affect us in our life together as citizens.
Now, here's a question about an old technology. It's from Bill, and he says that as a high school student, he read Barbara Tuchman's Zimmermann telegram only a few years after it was published, and he was struck by how the telegram was instrumental, or perhaps importantly incremental, to bringing the U.S. into World War I against Germany. He says, then I recently heard that Thomas Bockhardt wrote that without access to German intelligence files, that the telegram was less important than Woodrow Wilson's decision-making. He says he would appreciate hearing your comment and analysis on this question.
A splendid question, to which some of you may be thinking, what's the Zimmermann telegram? And in fact, it stands high in the list of diplomatic stupidities in the history of the human race. And that's quite an achievement, though maybe not one that you'd want to have. It was a document sent by the German Foreign Ministry at the behest of the German Foreign Minister to the German ambassador to Mexico in January 1917. The World War I's most desperate phase, and the Germans are about to begin unrestricted submarine warfare, which they pretty clearly understand will bring the United States into the war, but they're hoping to starve Britain into submission before American forces can reach Europe in significant numbers. And the telegram is telling the German ambassador to Mexico to offer the Mexicans an alliance. If Germany and the United States go to war, Mexico should come in on the German side, in return for which they will get back most of the territory that they lost in the War of 1846 to 1848. That is California, Utah, Nevada, a huge chunk of the continental United States. Existential threat to the United States. So if you're wondering, was Germany dangerous to the peace of the world in World War I? Yes. Well, British intelligence intercepted the telegram, and they revealed it to the American government. And the Americans contacted the Germans and said, we think perfidious Albion has tried to foist off a forgery. Look at this telegram they claim you sent. And the Germans said, duh, we said that. Why wouldn't we? And this was instrumental in bringing the United States into the war, or so it seems. The question is, how important was it to the decision-making by the American president? Well, for one, we'll never really know. I mean, how far inside Woodrow Wilson's head can you ever get? We do know, though, that he deliberately released the telegram to the press in February of 1917, which presumably means that he was trying to bring public opinion on side for a request to Congress to declare war, meaning by this point Wilson, who was something of a flippant pacifist through most of his life, had come to understand not only was Germany a threat to the United States, but more broadly, if Britain were to fall, that would be a terrible threat to American security and to the structure of world affairs. So presumably Wilson used the telegram to help bring public opinion on side, although seeing the telegram and the German response must have had an impact on his thinking, unless he was already bent and determined on asking for a declaration of war, which I suspect he was 3/4 of the way there, but not all the way there. The other thing to remember is that in the American system, the president, the most powerful man in the world, as he's often called, has less power than the prime minister does in the British or Canadian system. Neither of them, obviously, is absolute, but they do tend, through their control of the majority party in the legislature, to be stronger than even an American president whose party does control Congress. It's just the system is different in that way. So regardless of what Wilson thought, public and congressional opinion was moving in the direction of insisting on war with Germany anyway. So to some extent, I think what the Zimmermann telegram did is it clarified people's thinking. It underlined this nebulous sense that Germany was a threat, so that when unrestricted submarine warfare was indeed announced and resumed, the United States was ready to go to war. Not in a military sense. The Germans had a point. The American army was tiny. It was around 200,000 men at the time of the declaration of war. But by the end of 1917, there were millions of American soldiers in France. It's extraordinary how rapidly a free society can mobilize when it decides to. For the Germans to bring the United States into the war was stupid. For them to send the Zimmermann telegram, believing that Mexico might plausibly wage successful war against the United States, even to draw off American troops, the Mexicans weren't that crazy to get into that kind of war that they would lose. But to openly aim to dismember the United States as part of their geopolitical designs drove home to everybody just how menacing the Kaiser's ambitions were. And that's why World War I was a necessary war, fought under difficult circumstances at appalling cost. If you watch the Great War Remembered documentary, I'm make the case that the war did have to be fought for freedom, and it was hard to fight it better. And the American entry, belatedly, it would have been better for the United States to come in sooner, but it was a very good thing for the war that the Americans did come in and suffer, in the end, more casualties than the Canadians did. And the Zimmermann telegram drove home what a danger Germany was, even to the United States. But I think that awareness was already fairly strong in the minds of a lot of people, even that of Woodrow Wilson, who was not the sort of man who was quick to think that kind of thing. So the telegram was important, but not decisive.
All right. And having just watched once again that documentary, which, by the way, is available for free on YouTube. I'll put a link to it if you want to go and watch it. It is remarkable how little we understand about this war and how much more to it there is than just guys in trenches getting blown up and machine gun. It's so much more complicated than that.
Yeah, that's an unfair stereotype. Callous generals, soldiers led to the slaughter, war didn't need to be fought, nobody was thinking clearly for more than 4 years. It wasn't like that at all. It was a very difficult war, and one of the reasons it went on so long is not that men were stupid, but that on both sides they were ingenious in how they prosecuted the war. But it's also not true that the war was unnecessary. Germany was a menace to liberty and had to be fought, and the men who rallied to the colors in Britain, in France, in the United States, and in Canada are heroes of freedom for doing so.
All right. Well, thanks, Bill, for your question. Thanks for answering. And if you would like to ask your question of the professor, the URL on your screen will take you to a page where everything is explained. Thanks, and see you next time.